Welcome back to Pivot Points. I'm your host, Dave Allen, founder of Brand Pie, the brand consultancy working with businesses to deliver impact at pivotal moments in their journey. Duncan Edwards has undergone some of the biggest pivots that anyone at any level could ever make. After 30 years thriving in the cutthroat media world, he changed course, changed career, and changed continents in one fell swoop. Duncan found success on both sides of the Atlantic, and thanks to his work strengthening economic ties between the UK and the US, he's been recognised with an OBE. Duncan's journey is a masterclass of reinvention between countries and between cultures. So if you're a leader looking to leap across borders or businesses, listen up and you'll land with a flourish. Fabulous to have you here today, Duncan, and really excited to sort of talk to you. Just to get our listeners into the mood, just talk a little bit about yourself, because I know you've had an illustrious career and a very exciting life. So tell us a little bit about some of the things you've done.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. Yeah, what can I say? So I have had an interesting life, I think, when I look back on it. And I would say, by the way, it's not finished yet either. So got hopefully lots more of interesting things to come in the future as well.
There you go, you and I together.
Yeah, I mean, I and it's funny actually. Certainly, living in the States, you very conscious of the different attitude towards age that exists in the US and the UK, and there's plenty of people my age in their early 60s who are just getting started.
Yeah,
and it's very different, I think, in the UK. But yeah, I've had an interesting life. I mean, basically, from a professional perspective, I spent the first 30 plus years of my career working in the media business. I joined a startup straight out of college when I was 21, a media startup called Media Week.
Oh, wow.
Which was a business magazine focused on the media industry at the time when the media independents were just all starting, and I joined that as a graduate trainee in sales. And then after 4 years, I joined the Hearst Corporation's business in the UK, magazine publishing company, and stayed with them for the next nearly 30 years in different jobs. I was the CEO and country manager in the UK, eventually having kind of worked my way up in the UK. And then I came to New York in 2009 to be the president and CEO of Hearst's non-US consumer media businesses. And then, to be honest with you, the business that I was in kind of left me, really. Lots of technological change certainly disrupted the sort of magazine business and that consumer media business, which I'd made my life in. So in 2018, I kind of left corporate life, that media corporate life, and did something completely different and became the CEO here at British American Business, which is a non-profit trade association focusing on US-UK trade and investment issues. So complete and total change from what I'd done before. That's, in a very short kind of nutshell, that's my life story.
And when you came out of university, what attracted you to media? Because that...
I don't know. I was desperate to work in the media business.
Really?
Yeah, I absolutely was. I mean, I think I'm a journalist monkey. I thought it was so glamorous and exciting, that world of media and particularly newspapers, magazines. And to be honest, it was. I mean, it was just the most fun as an industry, working in Covent Garden in that, this was the mid 80s. So 1985, I started at Media Week.
And that would be the heyday, wouldn't it? 85 to 90 would be when everything went a bit bonkers in that industry. And
it was the first time that the media departments started flexing their muscles and leaving the ad agencies and becoming more important in advertising. It was the time of the sort of Murdoch revolution, Eddie Shah, all that kind of stuff going on. So a complete revolution I remember, the launch of Channel 4.
Oh, yeah.
These and then 24-hour television and all these kind of things. These were extraordinarily big changes, and it was fun to be kind of working in that industry as a kid at that time.
Yeah, I mean, what were your sort of learnings from working in a fast-changing industry, and how did you sort of cope with that pace of change?
I was lucky, and I think because I joined a startup, and it was like 25 people in a townhouse in Covent Garden, and my approach was to say yes to kind of everything, and so I was a kid, but I was a key holder of the building, and I would get in first, and I'd make sure the cleaning contract was handled. All the kind of just there's so much to do in a startup, and if you're willing and enthusiastic, then there's lots you can do. And I was a kid in sales, but I spent most of my time with the journalists who were writing about the media industry. So the guys who were writing about print and television and so on. And then I would say yes to every invitation as well. So I'd go to everything.
Every party.
Every part. And there were a lot of parties, as you remember.
Oh, I can. I have to ask, what street were you in?
Wellington Street. So we were on the corner of Wellington Street. So
because I was in King Street in Covent Garden. So that's crazy.
Opposite Joe Allen.
Yeah.
If you remember.
I remember Joe Allen
and
very well.
Also was the other great restaurant opposite us.
Yeah.
So,
Rules.
Rules just down the road. Yeah.
Joe Allen's, that was a whole new world when burgers came to London. We digress.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was great. So working in a startup, saying yes to everything, being interested in things other than my own function, my own role. And, I was promoted quickly, and, I was running the ad sales team after a couple of years. And then after 4 years, I went to work for Hearst and as a sales director on one of the magazines in Carnaby Street, on the corner of Carnaby and Broadwick Street.
Yeah.
And and then I loved it there. And
what was it like working for an American organization? Was that very different from a startup?
That's a good question. I think when I first arrived there, I couldn't really have answered that question, because until you're quite senior in the organization, you just think you're working for a British company. It was a very meritocratic, a very nice place to work, good people, and as I say, great fun. I mean, we were publishing at the time 9 magazines, but they included things like Cosmopolitan and Good Housekeeping and Harper's and Queen before it was Harper's Bazaar, and so on. And it was just a great group of people. Over time, I began, and as I got more senior in the organization, which I did quite quickly, then I started getting exposed to the US and the culture of American company. But interestingly enough, my predecessor there as the head of the company had wanted to maintain what he thought was the sort of Englishness of the entity, or the Britishness of the entity. When I became the CEO, I probably became more influenced by the Americanness of the business, and tried to inject some of the kind of energy that you find in US companies. So I think that was quite a big difference between what I did and what my predecessor did.
And when you coming to New York in 2009, that was an interesting year to come to New York.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Anyway, but that's a big life change to move from the UK to the US.
Well, I know this is called pivot points, and if I think about my life, that's probably the big. So I've done a good job running Hearst's UK business. We'd grown the business a lot. Changed the way the business was seen by the US as, and on the strength of that, I was asked to go to the US to run a bigger part of Hearst's business. Yeah, and it was. In my mind, it was just an obvious decision that I had to do this. I was just, absolutely all over this. But my kids were in their early teens.
Oh, yeah. I can see this might cause challenges.
And this was not positioned as a assignment. This was a move, so it wasn't a sort of 1-year assignment to go and work in New York. This was a full move. So it was quite a tough decision to take, and but we did it, and we've my wife and I have seen it as an adventure, and one that we're extremely glad that we took. So, but for anybody else thinking about this, please give it some thought because it's huge.
Yeah.
The disruption, and a temporary assignment, even for a year, is completely different from that full move.
So you sold the house, everything.
Not straight away. Yeah. I mean, we tried to keep a foot in both camps for a while. I mean, I commuted for a little bit, and then we moved, but we kept our house in London. Tried to do that, and actually, we kept one of our kids in boarding school in London. In the end, it didn't work, so we ended up moving completely and making the full commitment. And and that's been now 16 years, and in fact, we're now all American citizens as well. So
wow. Because I meet lots of business owners who, have got a good business in Europe or a good business in the US and want to expand into the other market. And, I say to them, based just on my own experience, it's damn difficult to do unless you do it yourself. And I had a great person in the US, but coming over here and then working with Mary Lee was a complete revelation. And I guess the first thing I learned, and I'd be fascinated on your take on this, is that this is a different country. We might speak the same language, but the differences are so great, and you've really got to tune into it.
I always say if they spoke Hungarian in the US rather than English, it might be easier to realize how foreign a country it actually is. And the fact that that English is spoken here really kind of fools people into thinking it's more similar to the UK than it actually is. No, I completely agree with you. For entrepreneurial businesses that want to expand into the US, I think you have to send someone here who has skin in the game, one of the owners or principals, and you can't do it remotely. You've really got to commit, and vice versa. There's different work culture. There's, the expectations that people have as employees are different. The sales culture, the networking culture are all slightly different, and you've got to be absolutely in it if you want to make it work.
And were you well prepared for that move, or did you realize when you arrived you were not well prepared for that move?
That's a good question. I thought I was well prepared. I mean, I've been coming to New York, 7 or 8 times a year for 10 years before that. So I wasn't completely unprepared for New York, and it wasn't a new company for me either. So I'd already worked for Hearst for 20 years, so I knew the culture of the business. Yeah. But then, actually life, the minutiae of life was complicated, and so we probably made some mistakes, but we're resourceful people, so we managed to get through that and find ways to make it work.
And any hints and tips for anybody thinking of making the same move, in order to minimize the pain or maximize the enjoyment? What sort of things would you do differently if you had your time again?
I think if you've got kids, then you've got to focus on schools and thinking where do you want your kids to go to school, and that will probably decide where you end up living. Yeah. Rightly or wrongly, we ended up saying we want to live in Manhattan, and so our kids went to high school in Manhattan. There are pros and cons about that.
Okay.
I mean, I think my sons both would say they absolutely loved it, but they were both kind of living their own private version of Gossip Girl, really, in their Upper East Side private school. But there are also some downsides to that, of course. But we made it work, and taking advice from people. This can be quite a tough city too. So take advice from people who've already been on that journey. Find some friends.
And how welcoming did you find the Americans, and how helpful did you find them in terms of networking and cultural differences there?
Actually, I mean, we were extremely lucky. We had a company that wanted to be helpful and did things for us, helped us with kind of resources like advice about doctors and accountants and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So the practical thing, and then and helped us socially as well. So plugged us into a group of people, and we were off and running pretty quickly. So,
and did you tune more into the American society, or did you tune into the British expats? Which
honestly, Dave, I don't know what you found, but I've tried to do both. So most of the expats that I know end up with quite a close group of expat friends.
Yeah.
And they kind of club together. And that's happened to us too.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of Brits in the tri-state area. I think the latest number is something like 300,000 Brits, which is huge in the tri-state region. Those are people who are like me, who've moved permanently, or people who are here on an assignment, or a month or 3 months or a year or what have you. But it's a huge, huge community of Brits in this region. So you bump into them everywhere.
Yeah.
And then organizations like the one I run and other similar organizations mean you see them as well,
Yeah, I must admit, I went both feet into the American world, and I was lucky because I had American clients, and they then helped me get more American clients. I found myself spending lots of time with some wonderful folks, and my first Thanksgiving in Washington, sort of doing line dancing, drinking martinis. It was just
I've done all of that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've been adopted by some American friends. Actually, I have a house up in northern Connecticut as well, and we've been adopted by some friends up there who have us to their house every Thanksgiving, and as part of their family. And we've been doing that for, I don't know, 12 years or something like that, which is fantastic. So,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're not isolated in some sort of Anglo bubble.
No.
Yeah. And as evidenced by the fact that we've become Americans and US citizens.
Yeah. And what was it like arriving in 2009? Was it chaotic? And because the financial crisis was in full swing. And
obviously, if you're going to be a P&L manager of a big business, then 2009 was a pretty good base year to have, because the numbers were terrible that year, particularly in the media business. So that was the base year. So it was a very tough year in the media business. It was also a very interesting year, of course, because it was, the first year of Obama and his presidency. So there was a lot of that in the air. And politically, there was the sort of Tea Party coming through as well later in that year, and some of the 99% protests as well. Yeah, very interesting year.
How did you navigate out of it? I mean, 10, 11, 12, you're in a new country. You've got a lower baseline, but that's a fairly pivotal moment. You've got so many things coming together, and now you've got to grow that business.
Yeah. And in our sector as well, there was technological disruption of, an enormous scale. So if you're in the old line media business, whether it's television, newspapers or magazines, and we were in all of those, it wasn't so much the arrival of the internet, but it was the arrival of the mobile internet.
Yeah.
That was the big change.
And were you seeing an outflow of ad revenues? And
2009 through 14, 15, actually the magazine and newspaper businesses were in pretty good shape. They continued to do well. The natural protections of physical media were still pretty strong. And so consumers were still attracted to that media, and therefore advertisers were still attracted to it. But it was really after sort of 15 that the speed of movement away by advertisers towards digital, really picked up pace. And then, and the same with consumers, the technology of mobile internet and the device technology and the new products that were coming in, particularly. So if you were in the fashion and beauty magazine business, then the killer was probably Instagram as a new platform that said this is the place to advertise. This is where young women are going to be looking for inspiration about fashion and beauty. And that was the biggest thing that had the biggest impact on that fashion and beauty magazine business.
And you said sort of earlier that the sort of media business left you, I think. Was it those sort of factors that changed it and made you start to think about, your next pivot point?
Yeah, it absolutely was. And, what I was running had been a growth business. And I had, for all of my time I was a P&L manager from the age of like 25. And so I've been running a P&L, running a business, growing a business all the way through. And then it became clear to me in about, 2015, 2016, that this was no longer a growth business. And the mandate I had, I was a board member at Hearst, so I kind of agreed with this mandate. You couldn't not really, as a fiduciary. The mandate was, this isn't going to be where the growth happens in this company anymore in consumer media. It's going to shrink. And, Hearst, very smart company, was investing much more in B2B information, financial information, healthcare information in the B2B businesses, which has been a hugely successful strategy. But it meant the businesses that I was running were going to be starved of capital.
Yeah.
And my role basically changed from growing the business to managing a declining business. To be honest, I hung around for a while. I'm quite a loyal soldier, to be honest, but in the end, I decided I was done, and I left in the end of 2017.
And what attracted you to British American business? Did they find you, or did you find them?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of both, really. I'd been involved with BAB for quite a long time. So Hearst had been a member of BAB forever, as an American company that had a presence in the UK since 1910. And I represented Hearst on its advisory board. So there was this quite starry advisory board, of which I was by far the most junior person. But it was, I think it was chaired by Martin Sorrell.
Okay.
And Martin used this advisory board as his kind of new business, one of his new business, platforms.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant at it. And so I used to go to these meetings, and he'd have super interesting people at the table. And anyway, so I knew a little bit about BAB from the outside. And it just happened that when I was out and sort of scratching around thinking, what will I do next? It coincided with BAB parting company with its then CEO, putting out a search. And I was asked if I wanted to put my hat in the ring. And it was interesting because what BAB had decided was that they wanted someone who'd been an operator, had run a business, rather than someone who'd come up through the NGO or non-profit route. And so anyway, it worked out. And I joined in 2018. And I thought it would be an interesting and fun job for a while. And here I am still here. And it's really exceeded my expectations.
And were there any big adjustments from going from the private sector into a not-for-profit? Is that the right way to describe it, a not-for-profit? Or?
Yeah, we're a non-profit.
Yeah.
Although we're a non-profit, we try to run like a business, of course. But, look, where do I start in terms of the changes? And these kind of jobs, if you've got a big sort of work ego, these jobs are terrible. It wouldn't fit. So I'd come out of a business where I was a board director of a multi-billion-dollar business with a culture of, black cars waiting outside restaurants for you and all of that kind of stuff. And
all gone.
all gone. And you kind of realize it just doesn't matter.
That's got to be good for the soul.
It is good for the soul. And interestingly enough, I'd always been the kind of person that did my own photocopying and made my own tea anyway, and which I think everyone should be like, but not everyone is, to be honest.
No, but that sort of leadership style or that sort of attitude probably works really well within an organisation like British American Business.
You have to be. I mean, this is an organisation of 28 people,
yeah,
and so everyone has to be operational. And to be honest, I tried to be like that in my old life. I wanted to have my fingers in the detail of the businesses that I was responsible for, in as much as you can when you're running a big business. And understanding the detail, the mechanics of how the businesses work, being able to do the things, being able to actually add real practical value to the organization was certainly my style.
Yeah. And did you find the organization needed to change, or was it going along well and it was just,
No, it needed to change. I mean, it had some very positive things about it. So because of people like Martin in that role as chair of the advisory board, it had quite a big reputation as an organization at the most senior level. But as a matter of substance, it wasn't quite fulfilling the brand promise.
Yeah.
And what BAB had become was a kind of networking organization. It did that pretty well, but it needed some more substance in order to get the large corporates to be involved with it, because the large corporates, the networking is only so much value to them. For advisory firms, that's what they like. They like to be able to network around, meet potential clients and so on. But for the corporates, there needs to be something to bring them to the table in the first place. And that requires kind of substance. And so my vision was to make BAB a consequential and serious policy advocacy organization. And that's what we've done. So we've over the years, we've built a capability of engaging on public policy issues that matter to large corporations that are doing business between the US and the UK. And to be honest, we were helped a little bit by circumstances, because if you think about it, there was Brexit, which suddenly threw everything around sort of trade and investment issues between the US and the UK up in the air. Then there was the Trump administration. Then there was a kind of a different version of America First under the Biden administration. Now we've got a second Trump administration. So there's been just a constant stream of stuff for us to get involved with from a public policy perspective. So that's what we've done.
Yeah.
It is different in your ability to do things quickly is a little bit different in these small, your resources are different. So you have to be a little bit patient about the pace at which change can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what we've tried to do is just be consistent about what we do. We say we are a public policy organization that is pro-business, pro-trade and investment between the US and the UK. And, let's build on that, make sure that we produce high quality work, and then point to that and say, this is the reason why companies should engage. And if you can get the corporations engaging, then the service providers will want to come and meet them and network around. So that's what we've done.
And in terms of your sort of leadership learnings over the years, what sort of things, to an aspirational leader, as you're going on the journey of growing and developing your career, what sort of things have really stuck in your mind as things that you really take into your everyday leadership style, things that you might have learned in your 20s or your 30s that really have stuck with you today, those sorts of mentors that have been in your life? Or Yeah,
I mean, I've been lucky enough to have a few mentors. My boss at Hearst in the UK, who kind of tapped me on the shoulder when I was 25 and said, you have a chance of doing something big with this organization. And then actually the long-term CEO of the Hearst Corporation, who did the same on one of his visits to the UK, and is still a good friend of mine. He's now 92, but he's still at it as well, talking of the attitude towards age. Look, my approach has been, and it's in some ways, I know it seems a little old-fashioned these days, but my approach was, as I thought about my career, my approach was to get in earlier than anybody else, leave later, volunteer more, say yes to opportunities, and to continue to study and work. And so that's been my approach, to how I've built my career.
That means you're a driven individual.
I would call it, I have the enthusiasm gene in greater, to a greater extent than the talent gene. I'm an enthusiast, and I suspect, whatever line of work I've ended up in, I'd have found it enjoyable and fun, and I'd have found the entertainment in it and the challenge in it. So I definitely have an enthusiasm gene, and by the way, I think energy in general is a better asset than IQ if you're looking to build in leaders and in general in business success. If you've got energy, if you wake up in the morning with ideas and kind of ants in your pants, to get stuff done.
I love the idea of an enthusiasm gene. I think that's a great concept, and I'm sure there are lots of leaders who really do understand the amount of energy they put into their organizations probably comes back squared or cubed.
I don't know, Dave. I'm also very conscious that there are more than one way to heaven, and that there is no single approach to leadership. Mine is I do a lot of leading by doing.
Yeah.
So I like to be visible. When I was in the media business, I continued to be a salesperson for that business. When I was, when we were doing acquisitions, I would be all over that. I would be in acquisition profiling. I would be all over the integration process. In this role, I try to be a knowledgeable public policy expert, as well as the person who fronts the organization with the most senior members as well. So I think leading by doing is my personal style.
Yeah. I mean, you must meet an awful lot of leaders in your role. What are the characteristics of the leader? Because I've worked with some great chief executives, and there's 4 or 5 that are absolute standout. And I always try to think, what are the characteristics of those people that I've worked with that really made them stand out in my mind? Are there any sort of...
Have you reached a conclusion? I mean, I think one thing that I've noticed is that the most compelling people are the ones who, when you're talking to them, you genuinely think that they are paying real attention to what you say. They're genuinely interested in your views. They're giving you their focus for that moment, for that period of time. And you can tell when that's real and when it's not real.
Totally.
And it's a great skill that, and the most impressive leaders I've met are able to do that, and to give you that real time and attention and focus and interest. And I certainly try to do that. I'm not always successful at it, but I try.
No, it's hard to be a great leader. And I guess the 2 characteristics that I like is that they do what they say they will do, and what they say is really clear, really simple, and direct. They call a spade, as we would say in Yorkshire.
Yeah. No, I agree. Consistency and clarity are so important. We've all met leaders who are neither of those things, who...
Yeah, exactly.
You come out of a meeting and you think, what am I meant to do? What did they want me to do? And then the next meeting, I'm sure that was different from the last time. So there's nothing worse. So for the leader of an organization, to set, this is where we're going, this is our mission, and to be consistent about it. Yeah. I completely agree.
You've had the privilege of meeting, I think, quite a few US presidents. And
I have. Yeah, that was the function of working for a large, famous media company.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's funny. I've met, I think, all of the recent presidents. In fact, except President Trump, funnily enough. So, but yeah, if you work in a senior capacity for an important media company, you're likely to have interaction with presidents, or in most cases after they were president. So when they're on the speaking circuit and so on.
Of course, yeah.
Well, Bill Clinton was one of those mesmerizing characters who genuinely, what they say about him is genuinely true, that if he's talking to you, you feel that you have his undivided attention and that you're, in that moment, the most important person in his world. And it's an extraordinary skill to do that. But yeah, brilliant.
Brilliant. And what do you do to relax?
I'm a bit of a fitness enthusiast. So I'm a runner, cyclist, swimmer. I go on a swimming holiday every year.
What's your most fun adventure?
Well, recently I swam between St. Kitts and Nevis in the Caribbean.
How far is that?
5 kilometers. So wow. That was great. That was, so you've got the Atlantic on one side and you've got the Caribbean on the other side, and you swim across what they call the Narrows. And it's beautiful. And if you like swimming, I mean, you've got to really like swimming.
Yeah.
But if you do like swimming, that's a great thing to do. And what's interesting is also that it's not very deep. So it's only about 30 feet deep the whole way. So you can see the bottom.
Wow.
And it's full of creatures. So you're swimming along accompanied by the turtles and the stingrays and all the beautiful tropical fish that you get in the Caribbean. So it takes your mind off the fact that you're swimming 5 kilometers.
Yeah. What a wonderful picture to end on.
Yeah, it's a nice thing to have done.
It's been fabulous talking to you, and thank you so much for coming on Pivot Points. That was magic.
I hope you got what you wanted. I certainly did.
Good. It's lovely to talk to you as always, Duncan. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pivot Points. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more fascinating conversations with industry leaders in our previous episodes. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know more about Brand Pi and how we deliver impact in the pivotal moments that matter to you, head over to brandpi.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.